Hi. I was working on I attended the PCD meeting the other day, and it was very interesting where I noticed that the reporting that was produced by PCD and the reporting that accounts have, they were very similar. And I noticed there was a lot of duplication that's going on that PCD is doing that's happening in accounts, and they're producing these numbers, the costs, the committed costs, and the revenue, the inventory. So all these financial numbers were being produced, and it takes a lot of effort, I'm sure, by PCD to come up with these numbers. And the same thing goes with accounting. They also do these reports. Osama Dean works on these reports, and so what I noticed is that since there appears to be a duplication, and from my understanding of project cost control that should be happening in the PCD department, I beg to differ with what's going on now, because at the moment we are taking numbers and we are uh, uh, reporting these numbers, but that is after the fact. Um, so I came up with this quick presentation. I just want you to go through. Um, I, Please bear with me a bit, because from my limited understanding of project cost control, I believe we should be approaching it in the manner I'm about to um, show you now. It's basically a very simple method. I don't want to complicate it. I'm talking very high level, but let me just go through it. We all know the iron triangle, the cost, the scope, and the time. Okay, any one of these changes will affect the other. So I just wanted to highlight this for you to remember uh, um, that this iron triangle is very important. One thing is here is the project duration needs to be controlled, which is really, from what I've seen, is we're not managing the project duration, it's increasing. So just a reminder, all the project costs, whether they're direct or indirect, we budget them all within a project duration. Okay, a project has a time, it's finite, there's a time for a project. So when we do the budget, we budget these costs based on the duration. And the cost elements could be either variable or they could be fixed in nature. I'll explain it in a bit. Okay, so these fixed costs, such as material, they'll be incurred on the project no matter what the duration of the project is, in theory. And there are cases where material can be, if you've budgeted X amount for material, if the project duration increases, then you'll need X plus Y. But for the sake of this presentation, material is not variable in nature. The variable cost would be wages, equipment, overheads that will be incurred on the lifetime of a project. So if a project duration is increased, the costs on the project will increase accordingly, and there's no doubt about that. Okay, so the reason I'm touching on this duration issue is because currently we're just looking at two variables when we're doing the reporting in PCD and of course finance. We're looking at the budgeted cost and we're looking at the actual cost. There is no element of duration in the picture. And the fact is, these numbers are coming after the fact. So this is called being reactive to overcost in a project. We need to be proactive. We need to prevent any project from going over the cost. And even better, we need to, whatever the budget for this project is, we got to figure out ways how to reduce the cost. Okay, and how creative we can get in reducing the cost. So we have two challenges here. Is the one challenge is trying to reduce the cost of the project within the finite time it's being allocated, and preventing it from going by going over cost, which could be due to the duration increase, okay, for whatever reason. Now, the key to cost control, so the project manager needs to make sure that the project duration schedule does not exceed the target date. And I don't see this happening in this company. All I see is maybe We have some schedulers who are doing the schedule in Primavera, that's being controlled by the planning team, but there's no one who's keeping a close eye on the schedule and what's going on with the schedule, or if it's going to go over schedule. This is not happening. And this is key because a project is not just elements of, of, of budget and cost. There is a duration factor involved, and that is very important. Yes, and you keep telling me we can't integrate, but with our our schedule, with the costs, but that needs to be done. Now, a schedule can be increased due to internal inefficiencies, okay, which need to be closely monitored, or the schedule is increased due to external outcomes. Scope change is happening a lot, and there are other factors that are beyond our control or the client or the contractor. It could be anything, okay, that's out of scope. Maybe gate passes weren't allowed issued for certain manpower. So I think this is another issue which has got to do with project risk and what can happen. So a schedule can increase due to our internal inefficiencies, okay, or it can increase to external outcomes such as scope change. So project duration affects cost fluctuation. So here, just let me show you. So let's imagine this is a project here, and these are the elements, the cost elements in a project: material, wages, equipment, subcontracting, and overheads. And it has a duration. Now, these costs should be managed within this project duration, but what happens is we tend to overshoot sometimes into this. This is the increased amount of duration that was affected. So obviously we have to pay more people during this additional duration. That's an additional cost. Equipment needs to be utilized, subcontracting, and maybe indirect costs are also affected. So the message I'm trying to send here is duration is key to cost control. It is key to cost control. If we don't keep a close eye on duration, no matter what we do, collecting numbers, trying to control POs, we're still going to go over cost of the project. So management of change is essential here. Scope change will increase costs, which will increase duration if no additional resources are used to maintain the original duration of the project. What I'm trying to say, if there's a scope change here, you have two options. Either you get additional resources and to address the scope, of course, once it's approved by the client, or not approved, of course. In our case, we end up having claims. So to prevent the duration increase, so we get additional resources. We say no, we can't get additional resources. We will address the scope, but automatically when you address the scope, it's going to shift the critical path, and automatically you would have gone over the target date of the project. So scope change is key here. Now, we may be inefficient in our production, so we're not producing what we should produce in a certain time, and this has got to do with earned value. And so again, if we don't keep a close eye on how we're doing well on the activities and the duration and the costs, we will end up being inefficient. So this is one issue. So how to control duration? We need a WBS, okay? Without a WBS, we can't have a manageable schedule, and we can't resource cost allocate to each activity. It's impossible to manage a project without a duration for each activity and without the cost for each activity. Hence, we've been talking about allocate cost to the activity so we can use earned value. We keep talking about this. So no matter what you do now, unless this is applied, you really can't be proactive in nature on cost control. Okay? Again, I believe in the activities on the critical path should be managed and eyes kept closely. Again, but once we do this WBS should be agreed with the client, because at the end of the day, the trick is to identify scope change and work on a change order, okay, as soon as possible. Otherwise, we're going to end up having claims. And I mentioned currently, scope change is identified only once we have incurred additional costs. We're not being proactive in scope change. I think we end up doing it, okay, which is affecting the project. Go revisit some of the projects where we have increased in duration, where we had to continue with the project. The client said continue, and he'll address our our refinancing later on, and we ended up going claims. Go back, revisit. I don't know how many times this has happened, but definitely I know we have a big claims department up there that is fighting to get us claims, and we end up negotiating with the client. Okay, whether we're the subcontractor or whether we're the main contractor. Claims are bad news, correct? Once we are in a claim situation, we are in a negotiation stage. Okay, and of course, you know, we spend additional money on a project for scope change, which affects, the opportunity cost of this money being financed, being collecting interest in the bank or whatever.